Shalom Aleichem. My name is Rabbi Adam Dubin, and I, under normal circumstances, be working for the RCA in the RCA office, but of course, right now, working remotely. Hopefully, that will be able to end soon, but in the right time. This week's parsha, as we know, is Parshat Devarim, and as we know, we always read Parshat Devarim before Tisha B'av. And the parsha begins, Ela Dvarim Asher Diber Moshe El Kol Yisrael Be'eva HaYardin B'Midbar Ba'arava Mosuf Ben Paran Ben Teufel Ben Lavan B'Dei Zahav. Right, that these are the words that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to the Bnei Yisrael Eva HaYardin in the Midbar, in the plain opposite of the Yam Suf, between Paran and Teufel, and Lavan the Chatzeros and Dei Zahav. And Rashi begins his perush with Dibur Hamaskil El Dvarim by saying Lefi Shehen Divrei Teichachos, that these are words of Teichacha. Now, of course, Rashi inside says a lot more about the fact that the Teichacha is done in a tznius. He actually uses the word. It's a remez. It's hinted at. It's not directly. And he says the reason is because of Kavod Yisrael. Okay, but that they are words of Teichacha. And then in the Dibur Maschil of V'dei Zahav, Rashi goes on to say, Ala Egel She'asu Bishvil Roiv Zahav Shahayalhem. That he gave them Teichacha about the account of the Egel Zahav that they made out of the consequence of all the gold that they had. And the fact that Rashi already explained that this pasuk is one of teichacha, of rebuke, so why does he need to then repeat the explanation of Dei Zahav, and he rebuked them because of the gold? The reason is that Rashi is teaching us that Dei Zahav is not the name of a place, as we might have thought, and as a result, we might not be aware that also other words of teichacha. So Rashi is teaching us, despite the fact that Dei Zahav is not the name of a place, nevertheless it is a form of Teichacha. Because the actual meaning of the words is enough gold. Die, enough. He was rebuking them for using the gold that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them in order to make Avodah Zarah, rather than using it for positive purposes. This is similar to Rashi's comments on between Paran and Teufel and Lavan. Rashi explains that Moshe rebuked them about the foolish things that they said, the foolish things rather, the taflu in tiflus, as we know in Hebrew, and about the man, which is also Lavan, which is white. In other words, Teufel and Lavan were also not names of places. So why does Rashi understand that the cities listed in the pasuk, Lavan and Teufel and Dei Zahav, are not actual places? Because, as he wrote about Lavan and Teufel, Rabbi Yochanan said, we have reviewed the entirety of Tanakh, and we have now found no places named Lavan and Teufel. So why does Rashi assume that Dei Zahav is not the name of a place? We find many places were named after an event that took place over there. Example in Parshas Noach, Parshas Vayera, Parshas Vayechi, Parshas B'Shalach, Parshas Shlach, and many other places. In this case, it would be a place where the Bnei Yisrael committed the Chet Egel. Further, there are places that are just mentioned once in Tanakh. The fact that these places are not found elsewhere doesn't necessarily seem to rule this out. So we can't say that the same regarding Lavan and Teufel. Foolish things that were done with the man, which was also Lavan, does not allude to a particular Avera. The fact that man is white is merely one of its attributes, its color. In addition, all the Averas involve tiflus. They all involve foolishness. As names of places, they would not allude to any particular Avera. The Zahav, however, at least explains the cause of the Chet Egel. Rashi has previously stated the same point that he makes over here. The Chet Egel was caused by the fact that the Bnei Yisrael were given too much gold. The Torah tells us of the Avera Moshe's beseeching HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgiveness in the Parshat Kisisa. It says, Moshe returned to Hashem and said, please This people has committed a grave avera. They've made themselves a god of gold, so to speak. Rashi uses the Dibra maskil and a god of gold, and explains that Moshe was telling Hashem, it was you who caused them to do an avera, for you gave them the gold and whatever they wanted. How could they have avoided committing the avera? Instead of proving his position from the Navi and from Sefer Hosea, why did he not bring this proof from the earlier pasuk in the Torah, something which we already had learned? It's clear why Rashi explains the pasuk earlier that the Bnei Yisrael sinned because Hashem gave us too much gold. Otherwise, it's impossible to understand. Moshe was davening on behalf of the Bnei Yisrael. Why did he say, please, this people's committed a grave avera. They've made themselves a god of gold. What sort of tefillah is that? He seems to be emphasizing how great our avera was, rather than by trying to minimize it. So therefore, Rashi explains that Moshe could not minimize the avera. On the contrary, he had to say that they committed a grave avera. However, he could rationalize the avera. His plea was that the Bnei Yisrael were guilty with an explanation. That the Bnei Yisrael only committed the avera because Hashem had given them too much gold. And from this, it's clear that Rashi couldn't bring a proof from there. There, Rashi was trying to emphasize that they were not totally responsible. Here, Rashi is explaining how Moshe Rabbeinu had, in fact, rebuked Bnei Yisrael. That is, he was using this as a reason to emphasize the severity of the avera. They committed the avera with a large amount of zahav, which Hashem had given to them. Based on this, we can understand why Dei Zahav could not have been the name of a place. One can explain the earlier pasuk when Moshe was davening for Bnei Yisrael, and the large amount of Zahav was a mitigating factor in the commission of the avera. One can also say, according to our pasuk, that the large amount of gold added to the severity of the avera. But in either case, it wasn't the actual cause of the avera, since it's merely a superficial issue that explains the manner in which the avera was committed. The actual cause of the avera was, as we see in the beginning of Parshat Kisisa, that the people saw that Moshe Rabbeinu was late in coming down from the mountain, after having spent 40 days and nights receiving the Torah. Therefore, the place where the avera took place would not be called Dei Zahav based on the amount of gold that the people had. Looking a little bit deeper, we still need to understand Rashi's choice of words. Why does Rashi say that he rebuked them for the egel that they made as a result of the abundance of gold? Since Moshe is rebuking them, it would seem that he rebuked them for the egel that they had made with their abundance of gold. It seems that while rebuking them, Moshe was also given an explanation for their avera. He's supplying a rationalization as to why it might not be entirely their fault. Why would Rashi use the same words to allude to both their guilt and their innocence? The explanation is that this is exactly what Rashi is doing, and for a good reason. Rashi began his explanation of the pasuk, and in fact of the entire Sefer Devarim, by saying that the rebuke was in a manner that makes no explicit mention of the incidents that they transgressed, but rather merely alludes to them by mentioning the names of the places. This is done, again, Alf Kavod Yisrael. Out of respect for the Bnei Yisrael, he was also adding something to minimize their avera. That the reason that Rashi specifically wrote that they made the egel because of an abundance of gold, he's understood that just as Moshe Rabbeinu was careful to show Kavod Yisrael regarding Dei Zahav, the same was also true regarding the other places and the rebukes that are mentioned. To mention one example from the beginning of the pasuk, the first of the Teichecha, that Moshe alluded to by mentioning the Midbar, Rashi explains that this is a rebuke for angering Hashem by saying in Parshas B'Shalach, if we had only died by the hand of God, why did the Torah use a general term such as the Midbar? This word includes everywhere that the Bnei Yisrael had been for 40 years. Rather, in order to show a Kavod Yisrael, the Torah mentions a word that serves to minimize their Averas. It demonstrates the great test that our forefathers were facing. They were in a great and awesome midbar in which there were snakes, vipers, scorpions, and drought, in which there was no water, as we say in Parshat Shoftim, rather. Finding themselves in such a situation with such a severe test would certainly mitigate the averes of the Bnei Yisrael. Aside from this teichacha, it would also demonstrate the kavod that was due to them. The fact that we are now in Gullus, that we are now in exile, is itself a teichacha. However, this teichacha is tempered with the kavod due to Bnei Yisrael. The ultimate purpose of our Gullus is to bring about an ascent that will raise the honor and respect due to the Klal Yisrael to an unprecedented level. This true purpose of descent is to rise to an even higher level. By going down to the lower depths, only then can we rise to come above everything and all of our issues. And right now, in the midst of the global pandemic that we're in, on top of the rampant anti-Semitism and the rioting that has taken place all across the United States and perhaps other parts of the world as well, we go down to a low level, Mirz Hashem, only to come and rise ourselves up to an even higher place. That the Mirz Hashem, this Tisha B'Av, there's still time, can be changed from a time of utter mourning and loss and despair, the time of true simcha, with the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. Amen. Have a good Shabbos.